All right, let's talk about eggs. For decades, right? The poor egg has been at the very center of a huge health debate. We've all heard the warnings. Don't eat too many eggs, they'll raise your cholesterol. But is that actually the full story? Today, we're going to crack this myth wide open.
Yeah, this is the big question, isn't it? It's probably something you've wondered while you're standing there, looking in the fridge, trying to decide on breakfast. So let's do it. Let's find a clear, science-backed answer once and for all.
Okay, let's get into it. And look, to get to the real truth here, we're not going to rely on old wives' tales. No, we're going straight to the source, the actual research from major health institutions, to see what they've discovered.
To kick off our investigation, I want you to just think about one number, and that number is 2. Now, why 2? Well, get this. Recent studies have found that eating up to 2 eggs per day can absolutely be part of a heart-healthy diet. I know, right? That completely flies in the face of everything we've been told for years. And here is our first major clue. A study from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found something pretty fascinating. When people ate 2 eggs a day, but, and this is the key, as part of a diet that was low in saturated fat, their LDL levels, the bad cholesterol, they didn't just stay the same, they actually went down. How about that?
Okay, so this is probably the most important thing to get your head around. There's a huge difference between dietary cholesterol and blood cholesterol. Dietary cholesterol is the stuff that's in your food, like in an egg yolk. But blood cholesterol, especially that LDL stuff, is what's actually flowing through your veins. And it turns out for most of us, the cholesterol we eat doesn't really move the needle on the cholesterol in our blood. Your own liver is actually the main cholesterol factory in your body.
And it's not just one study. Harvard Health is on board with this too. They've confirmed that for the vast majority of people, having an egg a day isn't linked to a higher risk of heart disease. See, our bodies are pretty smart. When you eat a bit more cholesterol, your body usually just makes a little less to balance things out. So if the egg isn't the villain here, then what is? Well, the Mayo Clinic points a big finger at the real culprit, what you're eating with the egg. Just picture that classic diner breakfast, right? Eggs fried in a ton of butter with a side of greasy sausage and melted cheese. That whole plate is just loaded with saturated fat. And that's the stuff that really sends your bad cholesterol through the roof. So let's just put a bow on this. The scientific consensus now is pretty clear. It's not the cholesterol in the egg that's the big bad wolf here. It's the saturated fat from the entire meal that we really need to be paying attention to. Okay, so after all that evidence, where does that leave us? Well, it's time for the verdict. This is where the old myth finally crashes into reality, and we can officially call this one busted. This right here, this is the aha moment. The old myth was super simple. Eat eggs, get high cholesterol. End of story. But the reality is way more nuanced, and honestly, it's more empowering. It's the saturated fats from things like bacon, sausage, and butter that have a much bigger impact on your blood cholesterol than the stuff that's naturally in the egg itself. The science is great and all, but what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's check out a quick story that really shows how putting this knowledge into practice can totally change things for the better. So, let's talk about a guy named Arav. Arav loved his daily omelet. I mean, who doesn't? But he was doing that classic combo, cooked in butter, served with a side of bacon. He was getting worried about his cholesterol, so he made a really simple switch. He didn't give up his omelet, no way. He just started cooking it with a little olive oil instead, and he swapped the bacon for some veggies and a slice of whole grain toast. And the result? His LDL levels actually improved, and he felt like he had way more energy. See, he kept the egg, he just changed the company it keeps. So what does all this mean for you, for your breakfast tomorrow morning? Well, here's your blueprint. These are the main takeaways from everything we've just talked about so you can feel totally confident about your choices. All right, let's run through that blueprint real quick. First, for most of us, eggs in moderation are totally fine. Second, watch out for what you serve them with. The bacon, the butter, the cheese, that's the real trouble. Third, don't forget, up to 2 eggs a day as part of a diet that's low in saturated fat might actually help your cholesterol. And finally,
The science is in, and the big guns like Harvard and the Mayo Clinic agree that old fear about eggs is officially a myth.
So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. Now that you know it's less about the egg and more about what's on the plate with it, what adjustments might you make to your morning routine? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.